may come as a surprise to some, but our next guest will tell you it's one of the better ways to maximise the value of your property. Tonight on the panel we are joined by Frank, Amar, Peter and Andy to tell us why granny flats are a surefire way to not only earn income on your property, but are becoming increasingly popular residential choices for young Australians. Now Frank, let's start with you. You're currently the owner of a brand new granny flat. What made you decide to build this secondary dwelling?
I thought it would be a good additional source of income from a property I already owned and adding value when it comes time for me to sell.
Fair enough, but with construction costs likely to overrun with any renovation or construction that you do, why not just buy an investment property?
Well, with the cost of land being what it is, I already owned the land, so why not go ahead with it? And it's been a great experience so far.
So you felt that building a granny flat was the best option for you?
Most definitely, because you spread your income risk. By having two rentable dwellings on the same property, I increased my cash flow. Also, building a granny flat gave me additional claimables, and that was to my advantage.
And what about the interior of the granny flat? What is that like? Because traditionally, when you think granny flat, you're thinking quite dated and old, but what's the situation at the moment?
In my opinion, the modern granny flat is not the converted garage of old. It's quite stylish and very livable, and it's also great for people looking to simplify their lives.
Joining us out of studio tonight is Amar. Now Amar, you develop granny flats. What do you have to say about all of this?
Granny flats these days are a good idea for people who want extra income. That's the main motivation behind granny flats in general.
So it seems granny flats are rather popular. Why is this?
Probably about a year or two ago, when the councils or the state government had changed the laws for granny flats. So what they did was they allowed private certifiers to be able to stamp plans for granny flats and give complying development approvals for granny flats, which made it a lot easier for people to build. Because of the, Sydney is high house prices, right? So the market's crazy at the moment. So you find that people aren't getting enough return on investment on their normal property. So it makes sense for them to go and build a granny flat in the backyard so then they can positively gear their property.
And who's moving into these granny flats?
You get a range of different people. You do get your young families, you get single people, uni students, some retired people as well. But you see a lot of people who are kind of first home buyers. They're putting a granny flat in their backyard to get extra income, but to allow for someone who's studying or whatever to also have a place to go to and from uni.
In that case, is there a high level of granny flat development in areas that have universities?
There's not really one particular area. I think there are a lot out in the west, so you're looking at Liverpool areas or Parramatta, out West Campbelltown. But then you're also looking at northern beaches and the North Shore, Chatswood areas, generally because they get more rent.
So obviously granny flats are a good idea, but how much value are you adding to your home, and how much does it cost to build your average granny flat?
It depends on the property, but if you look at it from a rental point of view, say for example you've got a $800,000 property, you'll be getting, depending on what area, you'd be getting about $600 a week for it. You spend another, whatever amount it is, 120, 130 grand on a granny flat, and you could be getting an extra $400 or $500 a week. So what that does is that positively gears your property. Okay. So that makes it worth probably, you could even see another 100K on your property value, or 200.
And once you build this whammy 2-bedroom granny flat, are you able to sell it as its own property?
Not allowed to do that. So what granny flats are is a sub-dwelling, which means that it's just a secondary dwelling of the existing property. So if you sell your property, the granny flat comes with it.
Well then, Peter, you would be asked to rent out granny flats all the time by the sounds of it.
We're getting a lot of inquiries at the moment, and since 2014 there's been probably over 4,800 granny flats that have been built, and they've become very popular in the Australian society. Now that granny flats are being built, they're nice and modern. They featured spacious bedrooms, some of them with 2 bedrooms, spacious living areas, you've got your modern bathrooms, People are preferring to live in a granny flat because it's got also use of a yard, and they're looking at granny flats rather than units at the moment, especially if they've got young kids or pets. Also, granny flats are very popular amongst the young adults moving out of home at the moment.
Which is surprising, because when you think of granny flats, young tenants are not the first thing that comes to mind, but clearly granny flats are no longer for your nana. Andy, you're a young Australian currently living in a granny flat. Tell us about that.
No, Francis, as you said, granny flats are no longer for your nana. I find the granny flat that I live in to be quite modern. After moving out of home, I really wanted to move into a place that I found to be similar to a home structure. So by moving into a granny flat, I'm able to have that comfort, but at a relatively low cost.
Did you have any apprehension towards moving into a granny flat?
At first, there's definitely a stigma surrounding granny flats, but these are modern granny flats built for the modern Aussie. Have a new kitchen, a new bathroom, all equipped with the latest technology. The people in the front of the house are lovely, and we don't get in each other's way. What more could you ask for?
Amar, what are 3 renovation tips for folks at home who have granny flats that could use a bit of a revamp and want to capitalise on this growing trend?
Sand your walls down, give it a nice paint, change your cladding on the outside. These days you can put up like a PVC cladding, which makes it look really nice.
Well, there you have it, guys. That's all we've got time for tonight, but I'd like to thank our panellists. And if you have any granny flat tips or stories, we'd love to hear them. I'm Francis Tsatsoulis. Good night.